Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. This morning, we shine a light inside the Ministry of Public Utilities. And to do so, I want to welcome the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, Minister of Public Utilities. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning, Rokas. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
How are we doing this morning?
I'm lacking in some sleep.
I mean, 'tis the season. 'Tis the season. I mean, the budget was read last week, and of course, everybody is discussing it over and over, all over the place. And this morning, we thank you for coming in to have your say on the Now Morning Show about it. The Ministry of Public Utilities was allocated $3.221 billion.
Yes.
Before we get into how that money is spread across, can you just identify for me the various
agencies
yes, that fall under the Ministry of Public Utilities?
That's a very good question, because oftentimes people believe that the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Water and Sewage Authorities, they're both
It's just the same thing, yeah. It's just WASA, that's it. Exactly. But no, it have more than that. So tell me.
Because WASA tends to be more in the news than all of the other agencies. So under the remit of the Ministry of Public Utilities, you have the Water and Sewage Authority that consumes a greater part of the allocation of the budget on an annual basis. But you also have the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission. You have the Solid Waste Management Company of Trinidad and Tobago. You have the Trinidad and Tobago Postal Corporation. You have the National Maintenance Training, MTS, also falls under the Ministry of Public Utilities. You have TSTT, the Met Office in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course you have the Ministry of Public Utilities head office that is responsible for Met and other central services under the ministry.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite a fairly large ministry.
But yeah, as now saying, I didn't even realize that all of those various. I knew about WASA, TNTech, TTPost. I didn't realize all of the others fell under you as well.
SwimCall,
MTS, SwimCall, TSTT as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. So tell us, how do we out of that $3.22 billion, how much of it roughly would be recurring expenses, salaries, rent, bills, that kind of thing?
Approximately 80%. They go towards recurrent expenditure. For example, WASA alone, the government funds WASA's recurrent expenditure to the tune of 1.2 or 1.3 billion dollars. You understand, that is money that will go towards the maintenance of its infrastructure, the payments of salaries, the purchase of materials to treat water, etc. So quite a lot of money from that allocation go towards the ministry's recurrent expenditure. Insofar as it relates to TTPost, the government funds TTPost recurrent expenditure to the tune of about $60 million. All right, SwimCall also allocate somewhere around $60 million for its recurrent expenditure for the maintenance of some of the country's major landfill like Beetham, Guanapo, and Forest Park. Where TNTech is concerned, TNTech basically is responsible for funding its recurrent expenditures, its operational expenses. So the money that is allocated to TNTech, it's really for its development program to undertake major infrastructure work to improve the reliability of electricity across Trinidad and Tobago, for the installation of streetlights, new streetlights, for the payment of large subvention to keep the rates of electricity perhaps the lowest in the world. So these things cost quite a lot of money, and they are as a result of the allocation that is made to the ministry.
Before we move on, I wanted to ask about that. You mentioned that TNTech is the only one out of the others that they're required to fund their own recurrent expenditure.
Because of TNTech's financial position and its collections from its customers, they are they basically fund their recurrent expenditure. So they pay their salaries, some of their maintenance work, they are responsible for it.
How come the others don't have that mandate?
They have that mandate. All of them have that mandate, but it is two business model that you're looking at.
Right.
All right. TNTech's operational expenditure is not as large as the Water and Sewage Authority. For example, the last time water rates, just use an example, was revised in Trinidad and Tobago was in 1993. TNTech's, the last time they had a rate review was in 2007, 2006. So TNTech rates, even though it is outdated, it is still a little bit more updated compared to the Water and Sewage Authority. And
but it still needs a subvention. in order to keep the rates down, right? So even though we collecting, the rates are low because because of the subvention, but it's still enough to be able to maintain their recurrent expenses.
The recurrent expenses,
Yeah.
for example, right? But TNTech does not purchase the gas from NGC. So it's a different model.
Okay.
It's a different arrangement. Had TNTech been required to pay for that gas that they get from the NGC in order to generate electricity, then obviously the subvention that is required for TNTech would be significantly more. But that money is still taken out somewhere. The government is still responsible for settling the outstanding arrears owed to NGC. And from time to time, what you see, it's, from time to time, the government will engage into a credit arrangement with a local financial institution to raise the necessary expenditure, to raise the necessary funds to be able to settle the outstanding arrears. So the government takes that responsibility to pay NGC for the gas that is required for the generation of electricity. So that is not a charge on TNTech.
Right.
So because of that arrangement with respect to electricity, the generation of electricity, TNTech takes care, basically, of its responsibility to pay salaries to its workers and to fund some normal operational expenditure.
Yeah.
All right. And the government, under the development program, will undertake to do some major infrastructure work that would be responsible for improving the reliability of the supply of electricity to the country.
Right. So under that development, but that comes out of the PSIP, right?
That's
Which is
correct. That's the general
the
PSIP.
investment program.
Correct. Yes.
So I saw that last fiscal, WASA would have been allocated 235 million, I believe.
Right.
But only spent 199 million out of the 235 that was allocated. They only spent 199 million out of it, according to the budget documents. Yeah, according to the PSIP document, right?
Yeah, right.
But my question is I mean, we want to say, yes, we saved some money there when it comes to what was allocated versus what was spent. Is it really considered savings? I know that we went to get an arrangement with a foreign...
The IDB.
The IDB, that's where we went. And so there was some money coming in from there. Did that have an impact on what we spent from the government allocation?
So even though you might get your financing from a loan arrangement with an international financial institution, that expenditure must be reflected in your development program. All right, so it is not off the books transaction that you're engaged in. So going back to your question, an allocation of 200 and something million, you spend 190 something million. Now, monies allocated is not money actually appropriated.
Right.
All right. So you have all of these projects being undertaken all around the country to improve the supply of water. So we're talking about WASA. And out of that, the WASA would have spent, based on the progress of some of these projects, contractors submitting invoices and what have you. So the government will say, listen, we will allocate this amount. But sometimes, based on the progress and some of the issues that you may have and experience on these projects, you may not consume the entire amount that the government has allocated. All right, and there are other contributing factors as to why you may not contribute or rather expend the entire allocation. So.
But I did notice that in this year's PSIP, there was now an allocation of 200 million rather than the 235.
Yes.
Is it because of what the projects that are planned are they costing less this time around? They're projected to cost less, they're estimated to cost less, or the next phase is just cheaper?
Sorry. So it's an allocation, it's a projection.
Right.
And depending on the pace at which some of these projects continue to roll out, you have the option at the midterm review, right, to get an increased allocation.
Okay.
So there was a revised allocation for WASA and for the Ministry's general PSIP based on some of the progress that we've made over the last year or so. But what I can tell you, to Rockus, is that in 2020, WASA's implementation rate in its PSIP was somewhere around 23%. which was extremely poor. So when we laid that report in the Cabinet Subcommittee looking at the operations of WASA and the general performance of its PSIP or its development program, one of the key points that report noted was that WASA was not utilizing all of the monies allocated to it to push its development program. As a matter of fact, it was at an as abysmal rate at just 23%. Because of some of the restructuring that took place over the years and the streamlining of some of its internal processes, we were able to improve the PSIP performance from 23% in 2019 to 2020 to over 85%. All right, in fiscal 2024, which is a very significant improvement in how all of these projects have been performed.
And I mean, we've been seeing the work of the ministry is always putting on publications saying that, you know, we did this and we did this upgrade to this plant and we did this upgrade to this booster and we put in a new one here and all that good stuff.
There's 191 projects have been completed over the last 3 years.
One that stood out to me was something about rain harvesting.
Rainwater harvesting.
Tell me a little bit about that, because we get plenty rain now.
No, that is a very important question, and I'm happy that you raised it, because I was not too sure whether or not I'll get the opportunity to talk about it.
Please, feel free.
Right. No, we are in the throes of climate change in this country and in the world. And sometime, maybe in the not too distant future, I want to come and talk about the impact of climate change on our utility infrastructure in Trinidad, not only on water, but on electricity as well. So we are looking, and we have been looking at projects and initiatives to build resilience against the impacts of climate change, especially on our water sector, especially on communities that are unserved and underserved, because they tend to feel the brunt of climate change and the impacts of climate change. And one of the things our international partners have been asking us to consider is the whole issue of rainwater harvesting, because unfortunately the rain is not falling in the traditional places where it rained over the last
I remember last time you said that.
So our reservoirs, especially in Hollis and Arena, it's still way below their long-term averages. As a matter of fact, we are almost at a crisis point, but we will speak to the country on that in the not too distant future. But one of the initiatives that we've decided to introduce in the development program is rainwater harvesting. What is rainwater harvesting? Wherever the rain is falling, we are looking to capture that water. And when that water is captured, it can be utilized to flush our toilets, to irrigate our plants, to wash our cars. And even if it is filtered properly, you can use it for portable purposes. So under the National Rainwater Harvesting Program, the government has identified a number of schools, a number of community centers and households that are located in unserved and underserved communities. And we have started installing rainwater harvesters on some of those schools and community centers and homes. So these schools and these community centers and homes, they now have their own rainwater harvesting system where they capture water from the rain, and the water is stored. They get their pumps, they get their tank stands, they get their filtration system to ensure that the water is clean. So whatever happens on the WASA's distribution system, especially if they're outside of the water distribution grid, they now have access to clean, portable water where they can go about their daily lives.
And who has to maintain it? The people, the communities maintain it, or does WASA maintain that as well?
No. So once the rainwater harvesters are installed, what the authority is doing, working together with Habitat for Humanity and Ministry of Education, Ministry of Rural Development, they train persons in the community to maintain the system. So if it is in the schools, they train the students to maintain the systems. If it is in the community centers, then a cadre of persons from those communities are trained to not only maintain the system, but to even construct their own harvesters in the various communities.
But I don't just mean the actual physical maintenance in terms of human resources. I mean, who paying for the maintenance? Because it will have a cost attached to maintenance as well.
So we do not take the responsibility for maintaining these things. Once they are installed in the community centers, then they fall part of the general maintenance of that community center. Okay. Same thing for schools, they fall part of the maintenance of that school. And obviously, if it is on the homes, the household would be responsible.
Let's jump across to some of the allocations. What can we look forward to seeing improvements when it comes to things like TTPost, for example?
So what we are doing with TTPost, and I can tell you that TTPost from a financial perspective is performing quite admirable. And what we have seen from TTPost is a reduction in their annual operational expenses and an increase in their revenue, especially coming from their courier services division. They're expanding their courier services to private institutions, like, for example, the U.S. Embassy, the Canadian embassies, some government agencies. They are making full use of TTPost courier services, Ministry of Social Development, Ministry of Health. And these are opportunities where the Postal Corporation is seeing an improvement in their revenue and their revenue stream. And as a result of that, they are becoming a little bit more financially independent, not having to rely, compared to the past, on government subvention for their daily operation. So TTPost, from a financial perspective, is seeing an improvement in their revenue generation, their financial standing, and we are seeing a reduction in the allocation being made to TTPost. But in this fiscal year, we are looking at revitalizing and some of the old TTPost historical buildings, for example, in Mayaru, in Sangre Grande, in Icacos, and there, in Curep. There are a number of old TTPost buildings that have been vacated and they're not being utilized, and they've moved into other areas where they are paying large sums of money in rent. So in that general thrust to reduce operational expenditure, we are looking to bring back some of these old TTPost historical buildings in some of the towns and communities around Trinidad and Tobago, so they can re-enter some of these infrastructure and set up their operation to continue their operations around the country. So in 2025 fiscal period, the country will see the rolling out of some of these initiatives happening all around the country, especially in Sangre Grande and some of our rural communities.
Are there any plans to improve or integrate more digital technology when it comes to TTPost?
Oh, there's a lot of work that is taking place on the digital front in TTPost. As a matter of fact, as a result of that, you're seeing that reduction in its operational expenses because the company is now looking to offer a lot of digital services, especially the financial services. So a consultant was brought on board about 2 years ago, and they have worked with TTPost in putting together a plan to roll out a number of new services in communities all across the country. And that plan is being scrutinized by the Ministry of Public Utilities so that it can be adopted by the corporation so that it can expand its digital footprint all around Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, unfortunately, Minister, we only have 2 more minutes left, but I really want to touch on both SwimCall and MTS. So can you give us quick updates in terms of how they've been performing and what we can expect from them in the next fiscal?
We are also seeing an improvement in SwimCall's financial performance. But in 2025, it's exciting times for SwimCall. As I have said and reported to the country some years ago, that our major landfills are filled to capacity, Guanapo, Forest Park, and Beetham. So a couple months ago, we rolled out a number of policy initiatives and policies to revitalize and revamp our solid waste management sector. So the first one is the beverage container recovery system. TTPost is looking to implement that with full legislation and what have you in this current fiscal year. We are looking to transform SwimCall into an authority, right? Giving it the statutory teeth in order to operate the entire waste management system. We are also looking to introduce and to implement the recycling policies as well, not only for beverage container, but in tires and all other streams of waste. So it is going to be a very exciting time for SwimCall, and it is now in the final stages of preparing for the sanitary engineered landfilling system at the Forest Park. That EIA is set to be completed in March 2025, and once that is completed, we will be looking at getting the necessary funding from one of the international agencies to commence the construction of an engineered landfill in Forest Park, thereby setting the stage for the decommissioning of Guanapo, Beetham, and the Forest Park landfill. So it's very
major move you're talking about there.
It is a major move. It has been in the planning stage for the last 3 years. The policies have been put in place. We're going to put the legislation in place in 2025, and in 2025, towards the last quarter, Trinidad and Tobago will now set the foundation for the construction of its first engineered landfilling system, thereby decommissioning all of the major landfills around the country.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that plays off. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get to MTS, but I know you will be back and we'll have a chat about MTS and the Met Office as well and the other
yes,
places that fall under your remit. But, Minister, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And all the best going forward. I look forward to seeing some of these changes implemented. And I'll be holding you to March 2025. We come in and check in and see how things go. Huh?
Come, we'll do a site visit. There's a lot is happening. It's just not talk. There's a lot of action that is taking place under the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, Minister of Public Utilities, chatting with us about the 2025 national budget. We take a quick break and we come back with more in our morning show. Stay tuned. Honey,